or stick on.
Oh, I think it's working.
There we go.
It's working.
We got it.
Okay.
And if you have on your cell phone, always as a backup for the sound, you can use the record app too, for the sound, just in case you ever need to sync anything.
Okay. Yeah, we'll start that up again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So.
Where we were.
No, we'll just have to start that question again if that's all right.
Yeah.
So again, with the RCMP and the Aboriginal woman, their relationship was a little bit shaky. So where would this stem from?
Yeah, the relationship between the Aboriginal peoples and the RCMP has been, a very troublesome one throughout history. First and foremost, one of the primary mandates for the RCMP was to take the young Aboriginal children out of their reservations and put them into residential schools, which was really brought to light over the last couple of years. Prime Minister Harper did issue an apology on behalf of the Canadian government for what they did to these children, because when they were taken away from their homes, everything was stripped away from them, because it was basically to take away the Indian inside of them, which the RCMP's actual name in the Aboriginal language is Nitchakan, and it basically means to take those who take us away, which the Human Rights Organization did do a whole report on that as well, where they researched the whole history and the relationship between the RCMP and the Aboriginal people. I do see and have seen a shift in certain people. Obviously, within an organization, it's always tough because there's always great people that really are police officers for a great reason, but there are always bad seeds. And, there was also the reports that came out recently where the RCMP claimed that there was a little over 1,000 missing and murdered women across the country. What we've noticed now with more research and the national inquiry that was approved by the Liberal government and Prime Minister Trudeau was that now there are over 4,000 missing and murdered women. So there's a huge discrepancy in the work that the RCMP has been doing throughout history. I think now that they're being held accountable for the work that they're doing, as far as really taking down people's information and accounting for each person that goes missing, I think we'll start to see a shift there, especially with the internet being such a powerful tool for a lot of these organizations like Idle No More or the Native Women's Association. It makes it a lot easier to hold a group accountable because they can't hide away from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we can skip the next question. Okay. Yeah. So
so the next question is, what has been the RCMP's reaction to missing Aboriginal women in the past?
The RCMP's reaction to missing women and also missing and murdered women in the past, I would say up until 3 or 4 years ago, was extremely minimal. I don't think they took as much responsibility as they should have. And I think it's clear in the 70 plus cities that we screened highwayteers in, it was pretty much unanimous that a lot of these families felt completely betrayed by the RCMP, that did not do anything to help find their missing loved ones. Sometimes the police officers' jobs are very hard, so I can kind of see it from both sides, where from what we talked about earlier, the history and this strained relationship between the Aboriginal people and the RCMP is that when a loved one goes missing, the RCMP isn't necessarily the first ones that they go to for help, because a lot of their family members or parents were either raped or beaten or abused by an RCMP member, or their child was taken away. So it makes it very difficult, I think, for both sides to adequately communicate. But now I think as history is changing and as people are really starting to take notice, I think the RCMP is taking a much more proactive response in knowing that they are being held accountable. So in my estimation, I think the internet has played an extremely powerful role in sort of bridging that gap. As soon as somebody goes missing, the posts go up immediately on various people's social media site. I noticed on our Facebook page for Highway of Tears, whenever a friend of a family member or whatever it is that sends us their loved one's image, it goes out to almost 80 to 100,000 people fairly quickly, and surprisingly enough, we have actually tracked down a few people that have disappeared for a couple of days, and I do think that the police are also playing a really proactive role in asking the family members when they do post pictures that they're not posting mugshots, because sometimes you never know what. Just because something happened to them or some of these young ladies legally doesn't mean that that their lives don't matter.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the next question is, has the Canadian government provided a sufficient response to the situation with missing and murdered Aboriginal women?
I think we're still in the very beginnings of discovering what the adequate response is for the Canadian government and how they respond to this missing and murdered Aboriginal women's issue. I think under Prime Minister Harper's government, I was a huge advocate and really pushing to get the Conservatives out, because they really did not care for this issue at all. And at every step of the way, there were roadblocks as far as communication on all levels of government. And it was really, really hard, and especially as a Canadian, I think it was really disheartening that just because it was Aboriginal people, I do feel if it was Caucasian women going missing at this alarming rate, that Harper's government would have definitely responded. What I do like as a plus is that the new leaders of the Conservative government, namely, I'm blanking on her name right now, but she has acknowledged that there is an issue and that they will take steps. I love that Prime Minister Trudeau is also, has been named a feminist as well, and I think in the right sense that for all women, and will really pay attention to this issue. I think the biggest shift that I did see was when we were screening Highway of Tears across the country, and it was actually in my hometown of Montreal, where Marc Garneau, who was an MP for the Liberal Party, made a promise that he would show the film in Parliament, it was open to all parties. And he couldn't promise, which is what Justin Trudeau did, and also what Thomas Mulcair promised, that within the first 100 days of office, that they would launch a national inquiry. And I think families for years and years and years have been wanting this national inquiry. And I think, we're still in the very early stages of it. I know Dr. Carolyn Bennett has done an extremely great job of absorbing all this material. I call it material, but it's basically these meetings with all the family members and people affected across the country, and hearing them out, because it really is the family members in how they want their cases to be talked about, and how their daughters or granddaughters or cousins on how the police force is held accountable for them going missing. And I think there's never a perfect solution, especially when you're dealing with over 4,000 missing and murdered women. And I think there's a lot still to go. We still have in northern British Columbia the transit system that is still not adequate. So women are still hitchhiking and still having that issue. So I think as far as the Canadian government is now at least